I have some ground rules. Please set down your telephone, and I will let you know the format of the program today. We have 3 speakers. We are here to celebrate International Women's Day. We have 3 speakers. After 3 speakers, then we will have a question and answer session. So even if you have any questions, we have a paper, pen. Please write it down, and you can ask at the end of the program. I have already told Priya that the majority of people will be here from Nepali, so I will have her translator to translate in English. Then the program will run in somehow Nepali. नमस्कार, सर्वप्रथम त म सबैजना यहाँलाई हार्दिक स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छु। समयको व्यस्तताको बावजुद तपाईहरु सबैजना यहाँ आइदिनु भयो। हामीले वास्तवमा भन्ने हो भने अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय महिला दिवस भनेर कार्यक्रम सुरु वाशिंगटन भर्जिनिया मेट्रो एरियामा गरेको 2008 देखि इन्टरनेशनल वुमेन डे सेलिब्रेट गर्नुपर्ने कारण चाहिँ के हो? व्हाई वी हैव टु सेलिब्रेट इन्टरनेशनल वुमेन्स डे भनेर चाहिँ हामी ऑडियन्समा आएको मान्छेलाई यसको के महत्व छ? हामी चाहिँ यो वर्षमा एकचोटी मार्चको दिनमा अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय महिला दिवस किन भन्छौं भन्ने प्रसंगमा चाहिँ एकचोटी जाउँ। जब 1945 मा युनाइटेड नेसन चार्टरमा नै इक्वालिटी बिट्विन वुमेन एन्ड म्यान भनेर चाहिँ इक्वालिटीको प्रोभिजन राखिएको थियो। त्यो पछाडी विभिन्न 1980s को मेक्सिको महिला सम्मेलन भयो। त्यो पछाडी 1985 मा कोपेनहेगनमा भयो महिला सम्मेलन, दोस्रो सम्मेलन। तेस्रो सम्मेलन चाहिँ 1989 मा चाहिँ 1985 मा भयो र चौथो विश्व महिला सम्मेलनमा चाहिँ हामी मध्येका 4-5 जना पनि त्यो सम्मेलनमा हामी पुगेका छौं। यी विभिन्न महिलाहरूको आन्दोलन चाहिँ कसरी सुरु भएको छ भन्दाखेरि 1902 देखि गार्मेन्ट वर्करहरूले सडकमा अमेरिका र युरोपका गार्मेन्ट वर्करहरूले इक्वालिटीको रूपमा सुरु गरेको यो महिला आन्दोलन भन्नु इक्वालिटी टु अपर्च्युनिटीको कुरा होस्, चाहे शिक्षाको, चाहे स्वास्थ्यको, जेको कुरा होस्, चाहिँ ती कुराहरू आज चाहिँ यो समय भनौं न हरेक 10 वर्ष पछाडी चाहिँ विभिन्न बुदाहरुमा पहिलो मेक्सिको सम्मेलनमा इक्वालिटी टु अपर्च्युनिटी कुरा गर्यो भने दोस्रोले 2-4 बुदाहरु थप्यो, तेस्रोले बुदाहरु थप्यो गर्दै हामी चाहिँ अहिले 1995 मा 12 वटा बुदाहरु गरिसकेपछि 2010 मा चाहिँ हाम्रो UN वुमन भनेर युनाइटेड नेसन भित्र एउटा सेपरेट महिलाको एन्टिटी खडा गर्यो, जसमा चाहिँ चिलीको पहिलाको प्रेसिडेन्ट मिशेल बाचेलेटले अहिले लिडरशिप लिइराख्नु भएको छ। र उहाँको मलाई यसपालिको 2012 को इन्टरनेशनल वुमेन्स अर्गनाइजेसनको थीममा चाहिँ एन्ड एम्पावर रुरल वुमन एन्ड पोभर्टी, हंगर एन्ड पोभर्टी भन्ने जुन छ, उहाँको मैले सुन्दा एउटा कुरा बडा मलाई उहाँको स्पिचमा के राम्रो लाग्यो भने हामीले यत्रो आन्दोलन 1945 1975 देखिको आन्दोलन सुरु गर्दै आज यो अवस्थामा आउँदाखेरि धेरै अचिभ गरिसक्यौं। भनौं न इक्वालिटी टु अपर्च्युनिटी कुरामा अचिभ गरिसक्यौं। अब भोटिङ राइट्सका कुराहरू सबै हामीले अचिभ गरिसक्यौं। तै पनि संसारमा कुनै एउटा देश छैन जसले भन्न सकोस् कि हाम्रो चाहिँ महिला विरुद्ध हिंसा छैन भनेर। संसारमा कुनै यस्तो देश छैन भनेपछि यो कन्टिन्यू एफर्ट हो हाम्रो पार्टबाट। र हामी अडियन्स सिटमा भएको जस्तो म किन मलाई आइरहेको छु, वाइ आइ एम स्पेन्डिङ माइ टाइम, तपाईँ किन आइरहेको छ नि विश्वका सबैभन्दा आधीभन्दा बेसी जनसङ्ख्या लिएर बसेका महिलाहरूको चाहिँ हक अधिकार र चाहिँ उहाँहरूको इस्युहरू नहेर्ने भने त समाजको पनि प्रगति हुन सक्ने बाटो पनि भएन। त्यसकारण अहिले यो आजको प्रोग्राम हाम्रो लागि अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय रूपमा नभए नेसनल रूपमा पनि हामीलाई इम्पोर्टेन्ट राख्दछ। किन भन्दाखेरि हालसालैको अहिले नेपालमा भएको 2टा घटनाले गर्दाखेरि यो धेरै नै इट इज भेरी हार्ट ब्रोकन। 21औं शताब्दीमा आएर डिएसपी जस्तो पोजिसनमा बसेको मान्छेले आफ्नो स्वास्नी गीता ढकाललाई लगेर जलाएर मार्नु भनेको यो कतिसम्मको हिंसा हो हैन? एउटा प्रोफेसनल एउटा पोजिसनमा बसेको जो मान्छे जसलाई चाहिँ सरकारले पावर दिएको थियो कि तिमी अरूको पनि रक्षा गर, घरको मात्र हैन अरूको पनि रक्षा गर भनेर, त्यो एउटा के छ भने अर्को अहिले धेरै नै महत्त्व 40 वर्षीय धेरै नै महत्त्व उहाँलाई चाहिँ विधवा 2 बच्चाको आमा खेतीमा काम गरिरहेको बेलामा गएर बोक्सीको आरोप लगाएर विभिन्न उहाँलाई अत्याचार गरेर 11 जना मिलेर कुट्ने चित्थोर्ने सम्पूर्ण व्यवस्था काम गरेर अनि जलाइदिएको भनेपछि हामी भनौं न 1975 देखिको त्यो विश्व आन्दोलनबाट आएको मान्छेहरू आज हामी फेरि ब्याक ठ्याक्क त्यही पुरानो बेसिक इक्वालिटीको बेसिक कुराहरुमा हामी गइरहेछौं। त्यसकारण हाम्रो आजको यो प्रोग्राम चाहिँ किन इम्पोर्टेन्ट छ छ भन्दाखेरि हामी आज वुमेन हर वर्षमा एकचोटि एक दिन हामी वी सेलिब्रेट विथ प्राइड। र यो युनाइटेड नेसनको थिममा पनि के आउँछ भन्दाखेरि हरेक वर्षको एक दिन चाहिँ तपाईले पास्टको अकम्प्लिसमेन्टलाई सक्सेसलाई हेर्नुस् र फ्युचरको स्ट्र्याटेजी बनाउनुस्। कुरा त त्यही हो हैन। त्यसकारण यसको लागि आज हाम्रो बीचमा वन्डरफुल प्यानलिस्टहरु हुनुहुन्छ र मलाई एकदम खुसी लागेको छ हाम्रो डाक्टर शर्मा हिज एक्सलेन्सी शर्मा उहाँ चाहिँ नेपालमा धेरै नेसनल लेभलमा काम गरिसक्नु भएको इन्टरनेसनल लेभलमा काम गर्न सक्नुभएको प्यानलिस्ट हुनुहुन्छ। यो विषयमा भनौँ न हामी कहाँ छौँ कहाँ थियौँ कहाँ जाँदैछौँ भन्ने विषयमा हाइलाइट गर्नको लागि हामीसँग अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय इन्टरनेसनल मेकानिजमको बारेमा बोल्ने डाक्टर श्री
inviting me to speak a few words on the occasion of International Women's Day in this August gathering. It's really an honor and privilege for me. I just would like to start from a small story in Nepal, because I would like to focus more in Nepal. Because I was the deputy chairman, that's what they call in most of South Asian countries, but in Nepal we call it vice chairman. I was the vice chairman of the National Planning Commission, and then I was given the responsibility to draft the first poverty reduction strategy paper of Nepal. Then I also had the opportunity to go and visit some of the successful countries. And at that time, one of the very successful countries was Uganda, and there were a number of other countries. And then I thought I have to do something in the planning process, especially in the area of inclusion. So there were 4 pillars in the first PRSP of Nepal, Poverty Reduction Strategy paper of Nepal. And by the way, that has been cited by the World Bank as one of the best PRSPs in the developing countries. So that was very good of them. But in the meantime, I think we formulated 4 pillars of development in Nepal. And out of those 4 pillars, social inclusion was one of them. And then when we had this pillar, social inclusion, as one of the pillars of development, then how to draw the policies and how to implement or translate those policies into action. I think it's not very easy. If you see the Beijing conference, if you see the CEDAW, there are so many things related with women and that we need to address, especially in countries like Nepal, because we have full of problems. But in the meantime, because poverty reduction strategy paper is about 100 pages, our usual planning documents are 600 pages, 700 pages. You can write anything you want, but the whole question here is how to write it and how to translate those policies into action. So I think I was influenced by 3 things. One is my field trip to some of the successful countries. And the second one is the definition of status of women in the United Nations. As for example, I think United Nations, if we say the status of women, they say 4 things: knowledge, economic resources, political power, and personal autonomy. I think these are the 4 things they define as the status of women, and then they evaluate on the basis of these 4 major variables. And then during that period, there was one book published by the World Bank, very good book, and then the author and the whole team visited Nepal. The name of that book was Engendering Gender. That was a very good book. I think still available, and it's an excellent book. And it talks about rights, resources, and voices, basically 3 things. And then what our teachers long time ago taught us is that you go to the library, you get thousands of books on any issue, rural development, women's issue, and then you have to see the framework. And you have to see what are the core variables, what are the core areas where you can start thinking about planning and translating those policies into action. So when we started writing the poverty reduction strategy paper, we thought there are 3 things that we need to focus on the women's issue in Nepal. Poverty, definitely, that's the whole document is on poverty. So we don't want to talk much about that, because that's not separate from women's issue, or that's not separate from the Dalits issue or excluded group. That's the whole issue of Nepal, and the whole document has been devoted to the issue of poverty and hunger. But on the top of that, I think we decided to have 3 major themes on the issue of gender. One is legal rights. Why I am saying is legal rights is that I think we have already found out by our studies that there are probably more than 75 laws and acts which discriminate women in Nepal. So we thought that if we cannot address the legal issues, probably we can go to the court, we cannot do anything. So I think that could be one of the issues that we need to address. And the second is definitely resources. When you talk about resources, there are two issues. One is human resources and the second is economic resources. And then being a student of economics, I know how difficult it is to economically empower people. It's not only women, even to the men. So that's really very difficult, but I'll come to that point later on. But on the human resources, I think there are a number of things that we can do in the areas of improvement of the human indicators, especially of women. So I think that was number 2. And number 3 was voices and empowerment, basically. Although I think at that time we still had the older regime before 2006, and then politically it's very difficult to do anything by the National Planning Commission or the bureaucrats. But I'll come to that point later on. Now, coming back to how to translate these things into action, I think that's very essential. When I was in the Planning Commission, we also developed a mechanism by which we can evaluate these policies annually, produce it, and then also discuss it with the World Bank and IMF. The reason I'm talking about the World Bank and IMF is that if you have the best PRSP, if we can monitor those actions, then we get more money from the World Bank. I think that was one of the incentives. When we finished writing poverty reduction strategy paper, immediately we got $100 million as a budgetary support. That was done for the first time in Nepal. And later on, I think we didn't get that one. So I think there are reasons to do that, but if we can do that effectively, efficiently in Nepal, that not only helps Nepal, but also we'll be able to mobilize more money from the donor community. Now, coming back to the legal issues, there are so many things that we need to address, but we started with the World Bank. Because again, I think the way the Nepal government works, I think I should not be telling that very frankly, but I'll tell you this today. I think if there is some incentive attached to some of the policy reform, it's easy to reform. I think you know in diplomacy, in development, that's how it is. Whether we talk about any countries in North America or European countries or even the international agency. So Asian Development Bank came up with the project saying that if Nepal does reforms in these areas, like address the issue of discrimination in the acts and regulations against women, then we'll provide X amount of money for projects related to women. So I think they identified about 75. 17 of them were more or less addressed and then addressed by the Parliament almost immediately, I'll say, after 2 years.
Inviting me to this talk. I'm truly honored to be here and tell you a little bit about SALT, South Asian Americans Leading Together, some of the issues that we work on and we do in partnership with local organizations that serve the South Asian community, and also, as Madhavi mentioned, how community members can get involved in terms of bringing about policy change, particularly here in the United States. As Madhavi mentioned, SALT, we are a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization based in Maryland, in Tacoma Park, but just right outside of Washington, D.C. And we primarily focus on issues affecting immigration and civil rights issues pertaining to the broader South Asian community and, of course, including the Nepali community. And there are a couple of different strategies that we use in order to achieve this mission. We do policy advocacy work, engaging with legislative offices, engaging with government agencies to make sure that they're aware of the issues affecting the South Asian community. We also do community mobilization and community education so that community members know about what's going on at the policy level as well. We do coalition building. One thing that we do is we coordinate a coalition called the National Coalition of South Asian Organizations, which is a network of 41 local South Asian organizations across the country. And we also do leadership development to try and foster youth as well as others who want to kind of become effective leaders within their own communities. And as I mentioned earlier, we focus on issues within the United States. And through the coalition, the National Coalition of South Asian Organizations, many of the organizations that belong to it, in fact, the majority of them are South Asian women's organizations. So a lot of the issues that we hear from them, which help inform our work nationally, are really driven by the need to empower women and to make sure that they are not discriminated against in this country. And also I'd add that many of the organizations that we work with, while they're pan-South Asian organizations, they do of course work with the Nepali community that might be in their particular area. And there's one organization that focuses specifically on the Nepali-speaking community called Adhikar. I'm not sure if folks have heard of that organization up in New York, who's been doing tremendous work on behalf of the Nepali community there. So what I wanted to talk about was, again, more broadly to share some of the issues we've been hearing as it relates to topics of concern affecting South Asian community members. And some of these issues are, of course, unique to the Nepali community, and others, as you probably know, the challenges that different South Asian populations face often share similarities as well. So that's one reason why we try and use a pan-South Asian perspective in working on these issues. I also wanted to provide kind of a snapshot of the Nepali population here in the United States. And in terms of the different types of issues that community members are facing from what we've been hearing, really focus on two factors. One is immigration-related challenges, and the other is labor-related challenges for Nepali community members and also South Asian community members here in the U.S. And while they're not specifically on the issue of hunger or poverty, I think I probably don't need to say it, but you know, when you have immigration-related problems in your daily life, or you have employment or worker-related problems in your daily life, then that affects the empowerment of yourself as a woman, and it affects your ability to be able to provide for yourself and to provide for your family as well. And then finally, I'll share some thoughts in terms of how each of us can get engaged on these issues of concern and make change at the policy level. To start off with, and you may already know this, but one thing that we're really excited about is that the latest Census 2010 numbers from the U.S. Census Bureau have come out. And for the first time, the Census Bureau has really proactively reported on the population of Nepalis within the United States. And there's a fact sheet that I have on this table here, which kind of provides a demographic breakdown of South Asians in the U.S. But in terms of the Nepali numbers, there are at least between 52,000 and 59,000 Nepalis who live in the United States. And this is according to the Census Bureau. And the Census Bureau does the best that it can, but it is imperfect. And this is what we always say, is that this is an undercount of the population. I see a couple of heads nodding saying, yeah, I think there's much more Nepalis who live here. What are you talking about? And you're absolutely right. And there are a couple of different reasons why this number is lower than probably the reality. And maybe you all saw this if you filled out your census form, which I hope you all did in 2010. But one reason is that, as you might know, there's no specific box under the race question that says Nepali that you can check off. So many people will check off perhaps Asian Indian. And what you had to do was actually write in Nepali, in addition to checking off some boxes in order to be counted as Nepali. And many people understandably did not know that they had to do that. So that might lead to an undercount. And another reason is that there's a significant undocumented population, more broadly within the South Asian community, but also in the Nepali community as well. Community members are understandably afraid to fill out government forms, so they may be undercounted as well. And so, but at least for the first time, we have some numbers from the Census Bureau for the Nepali community, and of course needs to be buttressed by greater community research. And so based on these figures, at least from 2000, there has been at least 155% growth from 2000 to 2010 of the Nepali community nationwide. And the top 5 metro areas where the Nepali population lives in the United States, and again, this may come as no surprise to you, is New York, Washington, D.C., Dallas, Boston, and San Francisco. So we're right here in the heart of location number 2. So in terms of the issues that community members face that we hear about, that we try to work on at SALT, one is immigration. And one thing we like to talk about when talking about the South Asian community, or even specific populations within the South Asian community, is that South Asians and Nepalis possess a range of immigration statuses. Taking a step back, I myself, I'm of Indian origin, and many folks in our community say, oh, we're all H-1B workers. And that's really all we make up in terms of the Indian American population. But that's not really true. There's a whole host of different statuses that community members hold. There's one report that came out by Adhikar, that organization that I mentioned earlier up in New York. They did a survey of community members, Nepali community members in New York City, and what they found is that at least 1 in 5 of their survey respondents were undocumented, so they didn't have any type of immigration status. So that's one thing that we really try and highlight, is that when the South Asian community is talking about changing immigration policies, to understand that there are segments of our community who have no immigration status, and that oftentimes when we're talking about legalization of undocumented workers, you might have an image of say that's just a Latino community member or someone from Mexico, but there's actually quite a number of folks who are from the South Asian and Nepali population as well. And then the second issue, which I'll mention briefly, but I'm sure that you all are very intimately familiar with, are problems with the diversity visa lottery program. And there are a couple of issues that we've heard from community members and community-based organizations around this, and I think I'll highlight it by sharing a story which recently ran in the mainstream press last year. It involves the story of Sunita. She's a 46-year-old.
First of all, Madam President of this American Nepal Women's Association, His Excellency the Nepalese Ambassador, and other distinguished delegates and participants. It is indeed a great honor and a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon, sharing some of my own thoughts about women's rights in general and the challenges for Nepalese women in this country. I would like to begin by saying that today is the day when each of us in this room or elsewhere celebrating International Women's Day have to make a new pledge. New pledge to do something for the people in our family, for the people in the society that we live in, and for the country we care about. So the challenges for the Nepalese women here is twofold. To improve the situation of the women in the society that you live in, and also not forgetting the plight of the women back at home in Nepal. Wherever we Nepalese go, the bond is very strong between us and our mother country. Although I work and reside in the UK, but we are still working very actively what contribution we can make to Nepal. And this is an example that you all have assembled here today to discuss what we can do and what's the way forward. So this is the importance of this day. Although formally the day was 2 days ago on the 8th of March, but it was very right on your part to organize the event today so that we can maximize participation. Well, the significance of the day. First of all, women's rights or human rights has been part of the international agenda for nearly 65 years. First of all, there was a challenge to promote human rights, to document them, to codify them, and to devise a mechanism to implement them. The process began, as Madhaviji said in the beginning, with the adoption of the Charter of the United Nations in 1945. Then one step further, in 1948 was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted also by the United Nations. These were the two documents which enshrined basic principles of women's rights, right to equality, and number of other human rights. They had to be fleshed out, expanded on, and as a result of that one, we have in 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant on Social, Economic and Cultural Rights. These were the instruments which were designed to promote human rights globally. But again, there were specific issues for which specific measures had to be taken. And the plight of the women around the globe required that there should be a separate international legal instrument designed to promote women's rights, and that was CEDAW, adopted overwhelmingly by the member states of the United Nations, and it has attracted a huge number of ratifications. As you can see, the process of advancing the international human rights agenda has not completed. Then there were other groups, special groups, indigenous people, and number of other groups for whom there had to be a number of international instruments adopted. So what we have today, number of so-called we international lawyers call them hard law instruments and soft law instruments. First of all, His Excellency the Ambassador said, whether nationally or internationally, if you want to do something about something, you have to begin by enacting new laws. So international law making, as I said, which began in 1945, is still ongoing, but by now we have a substantial body of international law guaranteeing women's rights and devising a mechanism to implement them. And Nepal, as a member of the United Nations, as a party to a number of international human rights instruments, had to enact domestic laws to guarantee women's rights. So as a result of that one in Nepal, and thanks to the openness brought about by the political changes that took place in the country in 1990, very many laws were enacted, existing laws were amended. To begin with, the civil code known as Mulki Ain was amended to ensure that women had equal rights, right to property and number of other rights. So what has happened so far, standard setting, both nationally and internationally, has been accomplished to a large extent. Fleshing out of those national and international standards has also been achieved to a great extent. I am not saying there is no more work to be done, there is still a great deal of work to be done, but a great deal has been achieved thanks to the foresight and wisdom of our political leaders and women's rights activists and human rights activists within the country. So what is needed now to make sure that women's rights are implemented? The following four things in my opinion. Number one, legal reform. Of course, as I said, number of things have been achieved, but still there are a number of areas where some more work has to be done. There is another one, social reform. Social reform takes a long time. Prejudices take a long time to overcome. Biases take a long time to overcome. But that is a challenge, a daunting challenge for the Nepalese society today. Another one is awareness. First of all, human rights is something that you have to assert yourself. And that capacity to assert has not been developed that much in Nepal. Women who still are subjected to violence, discrimination, and number of other atrocities have not been able to assert their right for a number of reasons. And many of them, again, to do with the societal reasons and lack of social reform. The fourth one is empowerment, empowering them, not only by amending or enacting new laws, but also making reservations for certain places in the state structure. Today there is a beautiful article published in the New York Times, how reservation has worked well in India for the masses of the poor. It's a long article, very well researched by a couple of people. How over the past 60 years, after the adoption of the Indian Constitution, reservation has brought so many people out of poverty, especially people living in poverty-stricken areas like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So reservation, of course, there are different models. His Excellency the Ambassador touched on. One may have different models, one may have different preferences. We can look at the models that exist in different parts of the world and can devise our own. But I think something has to be done. Of course, the record of Nepal is not too bad. Today, in terms of political representation alone, Nepal does exceedingly well. Nearly 1/3 of our members of parliament or members of the Constituent Assembly are women. We all should be proud of that achievement. But a great deal of work has to be done in terms of empowerment, social reform, and awareness creation. Now, what are the main reasons of violation of women's rights? Number one is violence, political violence or other forms of violence. We all know the story, the saga of Maina Sunar and number of other women were subjected to atrocities and killed because the country was going through a period of political conflict during which violence was perpetrated by both sides. Now, thankfully, that has come to an end. Guns have fallen silent in Nepal. So this is the time to consolidate what are the achievements we have made thus far and what more ought to be done. So far as the United Nations mechanism is concerned, Madhaviji asked me to speak particularly on the international mechanism designed to achieve, number one, to guarantee, number two, to implement, and number three, to
without further ado, now I would like to open up a forum. If you have any question, कसैलाई के question छ अथवा with the panelist Suriji Sangha, Priya, and then His Excellency, हामीसँग 20 मिनट जति होला क्वेशन को लागि, त्यसकारण म यो उचाइ गर्छु है।
धन्यवाद। असल के प्रश्न छ, पछिसम्म म आफै पनि प्रश्न गर्ने इच्छुक छु। महिलाजी नाम र परिचय कसलाई प्रश्न छ? धन्यवाद।
हजुर नमस्कार सबैजनालाई। मेरो प्रश्न चाहिँ हाम्रो सङ्केत सर The thing that I want to ask is, like, because I mean it was a very nice presentation from everyone. I'm very thankful that I'm honored to be here. But at the same time, when we're talking about women in different aspects, I'd like to focus more about the immigrant women over here. And I'd like to ask, what would be the role and responsibility of the Nepalese embassy and the consulate over here in the US in case of the domestic violence among the Nepalese immigrant women? Because these days I see more and more, like, women who are brought here by their own husband, married here, and then they end up like in a relationship, they can't get out. So how can we work together so as to end that, like, exploitation of the women? Thank you.
Good question, but the thing is that if there are any domestic violence related issues, whether that's done by the immigrant here or one of the officials visiting the United States, most of them are dealt by the US government, and we get the information basically. In certain occasions, like in the immigration, we even don't get the information, but if we find it out from somebody else, their friends and families, we can inquire directly, and they give the answer to us, the correct answer. In case of specific question of the violence, they keep it more secret, and then they tell us what is happening, where the case is, and when probably this will be resolved, the tentative time. But more than that, I think we have not done anything from the embassy. If we need to do anything, definitely I think you can give us some suggestions. We'll do it.
Yeah, maybe I can just share a couple of comments and suggestions that we've heard from the local organizations that we've worked with. Two things I'll just mention. One is in Congress right now, there is the Violence Against Women Act, which is going through, and that is something that comes up and it has to be reauthorized periodically. And this year in particular, it's come under attack. And it's usually seen as kind of a must-pass bill because no one wants to go and say they're not against supporting the rights of domestic violence survivors. So, it's important for different entities, whether it's community members, whether it's, other government entities, to kind of weigh in and say we support the Violence Against Women Act and make sure that there are protections, particularly for immigrant women. So that's one thing I would mention. The second thing is, we've talked with some of our local partners on the ground that serve domestic violence survivors, and one thing that they thought might be useful is, it might be a small thing, but even some resources that are in the home country about if you're intending on coming to the United States, what are some local organizations you can reach out to if you end up in a domestic violence situation, so that people know that when they come here, they're not alone. There are places that they can go to, rather than feeling lost and alone and exacerbating their situation here. So there's some kind of transnational, aspect to it. A lot can be done here, but a lot can also be done back in the home country.
If I may add just one word, I think working together in partnership with the Nepalese embassy here, women's organizations like this one, what they can do, look at the draft legislation. Does it cover every eventuality? Every community, as you said, there are some peculiar, unique problems in the society. Do the legislation under proposal, under consideration, cover every eventuality that you would like to be protected in your society. That's what I think they may have some role to play. Thank you.
कसैको केही प्रश्न? आफ्नो नाम परिचय प्रश्न.
Hello, my name is Rajni, and I work in the healthcare system here in the United States, but I've had the privilege of doing some work in Nepal with the surgeons that I work with, and I also run a charity in Sirai area. There's 3 villages that I and a couple of other friends run to one for sustainable agriculture in that area, 2 for a sponsorship program for education, and 3 just in general, whatever is needed in the village. One thing, just as a healthcare worker, I did not hear, especially the statistics in Nepal, and is it even a worthy subject to discuss is to health status of women. I particularly work in orthopedic area, and when we do our missions, the healthcare status of Nepalis in general, especially the women, children, and the poor, are staggering. And is that ever part of the big picture in the United Nations or within Nepal? I know there's a staggering number, like I think 4 out of every 5 children are anemic in Nepal. So are the women, pregnant women. But these are numbers that are heard and seen in the internet. So I would just like you to comment on the health status of women and what is being done in Nepal, and if that would actually help to bring the status of the family, of the women of the family. And I think one thing I would definitely say is that through our 10 years of charity, we have found that you can make a village, you can improve a village by improving and empowering women. And it is only for women that we've been able to change education of the children and the economic status of the whole village. Thank you.
Probably I have a whole lot of statistics in my iPhone, but I don't want to bore you with those numbers. I think in Nepal, there are 2 significant things that has happened over the last 1 decade or so. One is Nepal is highly dependent on donor money for the development activities. So worldwide there has been a shift from agriculture and infrastructure to social sector. That is one of the reasons why Nepal has been able to increase the budgetary allocation in education and health despite we suffered from armed conflict. If we see our own money, our own resources going to different sectors of the economy is analyzed, I think most of the money during, let's say, 2001 and 2006 went in the security area. But even during that period, if you see the share of the total budget going to health and education has increased dramatically. Now coming back to the health area, there is one more thing that has been done in Nepal. We have formed a basket in the Ministry of Health, like DFID, World Bank, and a number of other big donors. They put money, and then we can spend the money on the priority area. When we talk about the priority area, the government has identified 19 different types of diseases and sectors as the priority areas. That includes, as for example, maternal mortality rate. I just gave an example. We had the maternal mortality rate of 850 in 1990, and that has come down to 281 in 2006 and 7. That's a dramatic decline, and then we are thinking that probably it has even gone further down by 2010, but the thing is that we need to do survey, and the survey is done once in 10 years. The second is just like in the Millennium Development Goal, the infant mortality rate and child mortality rate. Yes, I think there are other bigger statistics like the life expectancy, but I think if we give more attention to these areas where the people are more vulnerable and we see the problem much bigger, then probably we can help in other areas of the overall economic, the health situation of the country. So this child mortality rate and infant mortality rate has also gone down. Government has also started providing incentives for for women going to hospitals and the nurses for the delivery. I think that has helped a lot. So I think statistically talking about the national level, Nepal has done tremendous progress in these areas. But again, I think as most of us we were saying that there are even areas, the remote areas, some ethnic groups, probably we need to address more. Just like we were talking about Basura. I think Basura only 30% of the children were immunized statistically. But if we see at the national level, it's 84%. So I think statistics only does tell the whole story. We need to focus. I think that's the reason why Madhaviji was telling about giving money to the mother. We have a number of these programs like providing edible oil at the household level, providing a monthly stipend to the household level, especially giving to the mother. There are so many, the school feeding program, there are so many things that has been done to send the children to school. So similarly, I think we have a number of incentives in the health areas, but we need to do more, there's no doubt about that.
Since part of the question was also what has been the approach taken by the United Nations, I would like to say just a few words. The latest attempt is to make sure that the healthcare approach is a rights-based approach. By taking that approach, the conclusion based on different data and information is that women and the weakest of the weak in the society will benefit more. Not only accepting international treaties, but devising different ways and means of implementing them in a country.
Especially His Excellency Dr. Sharmaji and Dr. Subediju, Priya, thank you for coming, giving your time and your valuable input to all of us. एउटा कुरा के भन्न चाहन्छु भनेदेखि अहिले धेरै कुरा आयो, धेरै कुरा हामीले सुन्यौं बुझ्यौं हैन। दुईटा छ, एउटा चाहिँ हामीले गर्नुपर्ने नेपालमा गर्नुपर्ने काम र एउटा हामीले यहाँ डायस्पोरा भएर गर्नुपर्ने काम। त्यसमा चाहिँ नि नेपालमा गर्नुपर्नेमा पोलिसी लेभलको कुराहरू भयो, त्यो चाहिँ नि गर्ने भनेर। अब यहीँ गर्दाखेरि जस्तो घरेलु हिंसाको कुरा जुन छ नि, अब हजुरहरूले कति बुझ्नु भएको छ, घरेलु हिंसाको एनवामा हामीहरू चाहिँ नि अब अहिले ओपनली कन्फिडेन्सियलिटीको कारणले हामी केसको नाम भन्दैनौँ, तर हामी कहाँ यति धेरै घरेलु हिंसाको केस यहीँ भइरहेछ। अब हामीले नेपालसम्म जाने त्यो बोक्सीलाको त्यहाँ अरू जुन हाम्रो सिस्टर अर्गनाइजेसनहरू हुनुहुन्छ, जहाँ हाम्रो दिदीबहिनीहरूले अरू त्यो एनजिओ चलाएर बसिराख्नु भएको छ, काम गरिराख्नु भएको छ, उहाँहरूको लागि छोडिदिउँ भन्छु। म त यहाँबाट इन्टरफेयर नगर्नु भन्छु, मेरो चाहिँ पर्सनल ओपिनियन हो। त्यहाँ यति धेरै सङ्घ संस्थाहरू एनजिओहरू हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँहरूलाई त्यो छोडिदिउँ। हामी यहीँ केन्द्रित हौँ, हामी यहाँ बसिरहेछौँ, भोलि हाम्रो फ्युचर यही छ, हामीले यहाँबाट इन्फ्लुएन्स गर्न सक्छौँ, हामी केही सुझाव सल्लाह दिउँ। तर यहाँ जुन घरेलु हिंसा भएको छ नि, त्यो चाहिँ असहनीय छ। त्यो चाहिँ किनभने अघि मेन्सन पनि गरिसक्नु भएको छ हजुरहरूले, यहाँ आइसकेपछि यहाँको जुन यो कन्ट्री अफ द ल भन्नुभयो नि, युके कन्ट्री अफ द ल अमेरिका पनि हो। यहाँ तपाईँले ड्राइभर लाइसेन्स लिएर त्यसको ल अनुसार फलो गरेर तपाईँले गाडी चलाउनुहुन्छ भने तपाईँले त्यही ल फलो गरेर तपाईँले आफ्नो घरमा तपाईँको श्रीमतीलाई, तपाईँको छोराछोरीलाई तपाईँले त्यो प्रिभिलेज किन नदिने? तपाईँ किन हिचकिचाउने? तपाईँ हिचकिचाउनुहुन्छ भने तपाईँले त जानु पर्यो फर्केर नेपालमा, जहाँ त्यो ल छैन, अथवा तपाईँले मिसम्यानेज गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ त्यस्तो ललाई, जहाँ तपाईँले चाहिने त्यो के अरे करप्सन गरेर आफ्नो केस दबाउन सक्नुहुन्छ। तब तपाईँ यहाँ आइसक्नु भएको छ भने प्लिज फलो द ल। हामी केही भन्दैनौँ, तपाईँहरू चाहिने तपाईँले चाहिने रेस्पेक्ट गर्नु भएको छैन घरमा भन्ने कुरा त आफ्नो ठाउँमा छँदैछ, तर तपाईँले एटलिस्ट रेस्पेक्ट यो ललाई गर्नुहोस् जुन देशमा तपाईँ आएर बस्नु भएको छ। त्यो कुरा चाहिँ प्लिज गरिदिनु भयो भने त्यो चाहिने धेरै ठुलो सहयोग हुन्छ। यो घरेलु हिंसाको जुन चाहिने आए दिन हामी कहाँ रिपोर्टिङ हुन्छ र आए दिन हामीले एउटा न एउटा समस्याको बारेमा हामीले कुरा गरिराख्नु परेछ, बन्दिदातीलाई भन्नु परेछ, अरू आइपिएलआरलाई भन्नु परेछ, अरू संस्थालाई हामीले चाहिँ घरेलु हिंसाको बारेमा हामीले रिफर गर्नु परेछ। कम्तीमा त्योसम्म चाहिँ हामीले गर्नु नपरे भने पनि एउटा चाहिँ नि हुन्थ्यो। त्यस हुनाले घरेलु हिंसा चाहिँ अहिले नेपाली समाजमा, नेपाली कम्युनिटीमा यहीँ धेरै छ, प्रशस्त मात्रामा। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि एउटा म यो कुरा क्लियर गराउन चाहन्छु यहाँहरूलाई हैन। अर्को कुरा चाहिँ नि अब एनवा जस्तो संस्थाले के गर्ने भनेर भन्दाखेरि अब एनवाको बारेमा अघि नै साथीले भनिसक्नुभयो, विष्णुजीले पनि भन्नुभयो, माधवजीले पनि भन्नुभयो, हामीहरू कोठे संस्था हो, कोठाबाट आफ्नो ल्यापटप र कम्प्युटरबाट काम गर्ने संस्था पर्यौँ है। अब कसैको सबैजनाको फुल टाइम भनौँ न आफ्नो आफ्नो पर्सनल काम छ। हामीहरू आखिर 2005 मा हामी नै गिने चिनेको 4-5 जना मान्छे जो नेपालमा पनि काम गर्थ्यौँ, यहाँ आएर फेरि भेला भएर फेरि यो संस्था सुरु गरेको। भनेपछि नेपाली कम्युनिटी नै यहाँ 40-45 वर्षभन्दा बढी पुरानो छैन। फर्स्ट पेजको मान्छेहरू एक त अवेरनेसको कुरा गर्नुभयो अघि डाक्टर सुवेदीले। अवेरनेसको कारणले गर्दाखेरि पनि अब युनाइटेड नेसन कहाँ थियो, के थियो, स्विजरल्यान्डमा छ, न्युयोर्कमा छ, त्यो धेरै थोरै मान्छेलाई थाहा छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि यसको इन्टरनेसनल ट्रिटी कभनेन्टहरूको बारेमा, सिडको बारेमा थाहा पाउने मान्छे पनि अहिले पनि मेरो विचारमा चाहिँ कमै छन्। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि यहाँ यति धेरै 70वटा अर्गनाइजेसन छन् डिसी मेट्रोपोलिटन एरियामा। एनुवाले मात्र इन्टरनेसनल वुमेन्स डे त्यो पनि 2008 देखि मनाउन थाल्यो। किन अरू कसैले मनाएनन् योभन्दा अगाडि? त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि अवेरनेसको कुरा छ। अवेरनेसको कुरा त हामी आफैले सिक्नुपर्ने कुरा हो। डायस कम्युनिटी जबसम्म अवेर हुँदैन तबसम्म कसरी केही इन्फ्लुएन्सियल पोलिसीको कुरा गर्ने। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि मलाई सल्लाह छ भनेदेखि यो कुरामा पनि हामीले चाहिँ यहाँ चाहिँ हामीले ध्यान दिनुपर्ने कुराहरू यो पनि एउटा छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि अब म धेरै कुरा गर्दिनँ, समयको पनि पाबन्दी छ। मलाई थ्याङ्क यू भन्न आँटेमा मलाई मनमा लागेको कुरा चाहिँ भनिहालेँ जस्तो लाग्छ। चाहिने हाम्रो निम्ता स्वीकार गरेर आज आएर यो प्रोग्राम गरिदिनु भयो। यो प्रोग्रामको बारेमा म एउटा अर्को पनि कुरा भन्न चाहन्छु। यो उ गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि के भनेदेखि यति धेरै संस्था भइसकेपछि नि अब यो अघि अवेरनेसको कारणले हो कि के हो, हरेकचोटि हामी एनुअल प्रोग्राम गर्दा हाम्रो डक्टर 2-3 चोटि आइसक्नु भएको छ हाम्रो प्रोग्राममा। त्यो 30-40 जना भन्दा सङ्ख्या कहिले बढाउन सकेन डक्टर। के गर्ने, कसरी चाहिँ त्यो घरमा पुग्ने, त्यो चाहिँ बुझ्न सकेका छैन होइन। अब हामीहरूले राम्रो काम गरेका छौँ भनेर हामीलाई राम्रो काम गर्ने संस्थामा गर्नु छ यहाँको संस्थाहरूले भनेको सुनेको छु है। अब हामीले फ्री हेल्थ पिरियड 6 वर्ष भयो चलाउन थालेको। चाहिँ अनइन्स्योर नेपालीहरूको लागि हामीले महिनाको एकचोटि फ्री हेल्थ केयर चलाएको छौँ। नेपालमा एजुकेसनको प्रोजेक्ट चलाएको छौँ होइन, काम पनि गरिरहेछौँ। तर यो 40-50 जना भन्दा बढी मान्छेलाई हामीले चाहिँ यो कन्भिन्स गर्न नसक्दाखेरि आफ्नै क्षमतामाथि चाहिँ अब क्वेसन मार्क आएको छ। त्यसमा कसरी यो चाहिँ अडियन्सलाई कसरी इन्फ्लुएन्स गर्ने, कसरी उहाँहरूलाई चाहिँ यो हाम्रो मेसेज पठाउने, यो टेक्निक चाहिने अब हामी महिलाबाट मात्रै भएन, पुरुषहरूको पनि यसमा चाहिँ 100% चाहिने सहयोग चाहिँ चाहिन्छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि अर्को चाहिँ अब अन्तिममा आज हामीलाई चाहिँ यहाँको चिया चमेनाको व्यवस्था गरिदिनु हुने राजा रेस्टुरेन्ट र भरे कबाबले चाहिँ हामीलाई चाहिँ व्यवस्था गरिदिनु भएको छ। उहाँहरूलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद। जे भए पनि उहाँहरू नआए पनि हामीलाई चाहिँ त्यो एउटा व्यवस्था गरिदिनु भएको हुनाले त्यहाँसम्म म्यासेज पुगेको छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ थाहा छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि थ्याङ्क यू सबैजनालाई। एउटा सूचना के छ भने हामीले चाहिने यो जर्ज वासिङटन हस्पिटलसँग मिलेर लास्ट 3 वर्ष भयो, यो 4औं वर्ष हुन्छ, हामीले चाहिँ फ्री मेमोग्राम गरिरहेका छौँ ओभर 40 को लेडिजहरूको लागि। अनि पहिला हामीले एकवटा पाइलट प्रोग्राम गरेर सुरु गऱ्यौँ। अहिले हुँदा हामी चाहिँ लास्ट इयर र यो वर्ष हामीले चाहिँ 3वटा गरिरहेका छौँ वर्षमा। त्यस हुनाले कुनै पनि चाहिँ हुनुहुन्छ भनेदेखि गर्ने। अब नेक्स्ट चाहिँ हाम्रो यो अप्रिलको 5 तारिकमा छ र हामीसँग फ्लायर छ, यहाँ फ्लायरहरू पनि आइसकेका छ। त्यस हुनाले हाम्रो फ्लायरमा चाहिँ छ। अर्को हामीले हेल्थ फेयर लास्ट 2 वर्ष अगाडि गरेको थियौँ धेरै कुराहरूको विषयमा, न्युट्रिसनको विषयमा। अरूको डक्टर पनि आउनुभएको थियो त्यतिखेर। र हामी फेरि गर्दैछौँ अब मेको 26 तारिकमा त्यही आर्लिङटन त्यस ठाउँमा हुन्छ। त्यस हुनाले गर्दाखेरि यो दुईवटा चाहिँ जानकारी दिएको छ।
मलाई एकचोटि शारदा खातीजी नयाँ हाम्रो नयाँ जेनरल सेक्रेटरीमा नियुक्त हुनुभएको छ र हाम्रो सरला पाण्डेजी नयाँ ट्रेजररमा नियुक्त हुनुभएको छ। शारदाजी को चाहिँ प्रमोसन भयो ट्रेजररबाट जेनरल सेक्रेटरीमा। र सिन्धाजी आउनुहोस् न यहाँ नयाँ टिमलाई यसो अनि आउनुहोस् न यहाँ। सुनिता शिवाकोटीजी continuing for another 2 years as Vice President for ANWA. अनि भवानीजी लाइक के गर्नुभयो अरे होइन, भवानीजी र मीनाजी आउनुहोस् न। र मन्जु सङ्ग्रला एक्जिक्युटिभ मेम्बर्स 2 जना चाहिँ कन्टिन्यू गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ, मन्जुजी र मीनाजीले। र भवानी शर्माजी नयाँ नियुक्त एक्जिक्युटिभ कमिटी मेम्बर, प्लिज कम अन द स्टेज। भवानी शर्मा एकचोटि